So this is a war on liquidations. This is basically saying, fuck you, liquidations. You're not an efficient way for markets to determine themselves. We're going to create a better model without liquidations. Greetings, everybody. Welcome to Flywheel, your number one source for everything crypto, DeFi, and all that's in between. If you want to know what's going on in the world on chain, well, you come to the right place. This is DeFi Dave here with capital K, and we are here to help you harness the power of the flywheel. And the flywheel is going to new territories, new primitives, new ways to do derivatives. We have on Ryan Park, the founder of Exponents, who's building an oracleless, liquidation-free derivatives platform on Bera chain. And Ryan has declared a war on liquidations. He is like, this is not the way to do markets. Market inefficiencies exist and will persist with liquidations. We can make a more efficient market without them. And I'm going to build this product to do so. That is what I got out of this. And his journey was crazy from where he started thinking about LSTs to building Anchor on Terra. And then, what he learned from that, and then going on to build Exponents. This is quite the meaty episode. Kit, what are your thoughts on this one?
Just one quick bit is what this product unlocks is what most excites me. It's a brand new incentivization market for speculation. And we're going to get into it in the pod, so I'm not going to say too much now.
We're going to save it for the pod. But before we get into it, if you're a new listener, make sure you go ahead, subscribe, hit that bell button, give us a like, let us know what you think. Leave us a comment below. If you're on Twitter, X, make sure you repost, give us a like, engage. All that helps. And make sure to follow us at Flywheel DeFi on Twitter, TikTok, and Telegram. You can follow me at DeFiDay22 on Twitter.
You can follow me at 0xcapital_K.
And let's get the flywheel spinning. Welcome back to Flywheel. I'm your host, DeFi Dave, here with capital K. And this time, we go into the world of derivatives and a quote-unquote Uniswap moment, 0 to 1 in derivatives. We have on Ryan Park, the co-founder of Exponents, which is building this oracleless derivatives platform on Bera chain to start. But he has had quite the journey, to say the least, in this industry. So, Ryan, thank you so much for coming on.
Well, thank you so much for inviting me on the call, the podcast. Just happy to be here and share my story and what we're doing with Exponents or any kind of questions you guys might have. Happy to go over.
Yeah, and I know Kit has a lot. I know Kit has a lot going into this.
This is meaty, but I think there's a good blend on this one, Dave. Ryan's rich history is going to be very much in your realm. So, why don't we kick it off
strategy
with that?
right here. So,
Yeah.
To get started, Ryan, what is your background? How'd you get into crypto? I read somewhere you were looking at EOS back in the day, 2018, 2019, because you were quite interested in LSTs before LSTs were even a thing. So, let's get into that. How'd you get into all of this?
Yeah, for sure. So I guess to tell you, actually my background has mostly been in physics and chemistry, during my student times. So yeah, during those times, I was going to school that sort of specialized more in science and stuff. So basically it was a high school that sort of teach university level stuff from the start. And, as for every student eras, it was always the good times. For physics, it was mostly about learning a framework of analyzing and understanding how every mechanisms function. Basically, I sort of got the ability to sort of break down any big or complex mechanism to its subcomponents. A great talent to have, to this day. It was very good experience. Same for chemistry experiments. It was fun. At the time, was very deep into doing experiments in the lab. Actually, to a point where I made too many frequent visits to the chem lab up till late night. To a point where the lab manager sort of had to lock all the doors to the lab, so I don't sneak in and do random shit.
Evil scientists.
That's dedication.
Fun.
Imagine being so into your learning that the teachers were like, we have to lock them out. It's too much.
Yeah, I was like so much scolded from it was like a school in Asia and Korea, so like the teachers like definitely hate you for being creative. So yeah, was like a bit of an outcast,
Nice.
but it was good times. Had a lot of experience. But yeah, like I guess I was mostly doing that during my student era. Like first time I got to know crypto was when I first like came across Ethereum back in like early 2017. So remember it being like around like $10 ish, like at the time. Uh, I guess I should have bought more, but I was a
Many such
kid.
cases.
Yeah, yeah. Like everyone has the same regret, but I was just a kid. Didn't really have a lot of money. But anyhow, it is what it is. But that really sort of, I don't know for some reason, but it really got my interest. So as I dug deeper into like sort of understanding what it was, like what Ethereum was really all about, I was really fascinated on like what the mechanics it was using and what it was trying to achieve. So like sort of spent like the next 1 or 2 years like while I was still at school. I even took like a gap year during like high school to mostly do like personal research. White papers were all the rage back in the days. So was reading all the white papers that came out to understand and catch up with the technology. And after that, it was only like when 2019 came by where I sort of converted more into like a builder type. So yeah, like at the time, like we were building liquid staking and the Cosmos ecosystem. And how that idea came to be was, proof of stake was still invalidated. Like it was still in validation mode. Like Ethereum wasn't even proof of stake at the time. Like the largest network that was proof of stake was EOS, and sort of had the idea where like if you're locking up capital or tokens into the protocol, like and you have smart contracts on top of the network, like isn't it quite easy to sort of create like a deposit receipt on the staking position itself? And that's like the idea I had, and sort of developed into liquid staking, like I guess. So interestingly, like I guess these days, like not a lot of people know, but at the time, like we were one of the first teams to come up with the concept of liquid staking. There were like various approaches back then, like sort of sparked all of it to come along. So we sort of contributed quite a bit to its initial conceptualization, especially on the fungibility part. So some people will remember that there was like a pretty big debate on like whether liquid staking tokens should be like non-fungible based on validator risk and validator type, or whether it should be like fungible based on like to maximize its utility on like the DeFi front as collateral and such. We were like pushing very hard for like the fungibility part, and sort of glad that it sort of made it in like to the norm these days. So, anyways, like no, was doing that for a couple of months, and then we had like an opportunity to share our ideas and thoughts with P2P, which is Lido these days. I still have like great respect to Lido. Like, liquid staking is such a crucial part of like the Ethereum network. And then like Lido is a team that sort of really executed very well in like a very benevolent fashion. Like they value decentralization and network security very seriously. So I still like give it like extreme respect for that. We also like shared it with Vitalik to get his thoughts, like because at the time he was like developing proof of stake for Ethereum, and that was like sort of how like the hospital picture on my Twitter stuff like happened. And yeah, but anyways, like we eventually sort of led to the conclusion where like liquid staking tokens, like it's like a cool concept, but in order for them to properly work, you needed a lot of liquidity for such tokens to be traded on like a secondary market. But there was like a chicken and egg problem here where like in order for such liquidity to form, you needed applications to integrate with LSTs, but applications would not choose to do the integrations like if there aren't enough liquidity for that LST token. So the conclusion here was like we had to build or we had to allocate our own efforts to sort of build an application for LSTs to get the whole system going. And that's how it sort of led to our acquisition into Terra, and how we got to like form like the initial team behind Anchor. Those are like quite the interesting times, to say the least. We got to see like the entire product cycle as well as like the entire market cycle. Had a lot of learnings on like what to do, as well as like what not to do. I just like to sort of like describe the whole experience. It was like really going from 0 to 1 and then back to 0 again. But yeah,
The
so
round trip,
no,
as they say. But
well,
as a builder,
yeah. Well, there was a lot of learnings. There was a lot of pain, both
what were
before
some
and
of your
after.
lessons from the Anchor experience?
It's a good question. I think I always try to say like all the learnings I had. It's really about two things, like what to do during a product and what not to do during a product. I guess regarding like the what to do is it's like the usual stuff, like the strategies that you take for adoption, like the engagement and like the narrative play, like selling a story to the community is a very crucial part of making it everyone on board, especially since in crypto like communities are extremely important. Where and like the other stuff would be just having a proper theory to product balance, where if you focus too much on theory, then you get no execution done. If you focus too much on product, you end up developing forks and not really having an impact. And there's like the UI UX importance as well, but it's pretty simple. What not to do is I don't think like Terra had like a proper theory to product balance in a way that probably before trying to expand like the technical fundamentals should have been like much more solid. So that's like the biggest take I'm sort of going on these days, where you need that it's a must to have your technical foundations to an extremely solid level, and only then you can start expansion or expansion strategies, as well as like you like there's no reason to sort of attack people that are trying to be benevolent. Like it's just that like a lot of people have different theories and different opinions, and sometimes it's very valid to listen to them, and they have very valid opinions. And same goes for like outside of the team and within the team as well. Like, well, at the end, it's the people that gets the work done. So you need to value them like extremely well, like the most.
Yeah. It's about people. At the end of the day, it's about people that make all this work, whether they're the people working on the project, the technical people, the non-technical people, the users. Like at the end of the day, it's about people. And I think you said an interesting point. You need to have a solid technical foundation. You need to have a solid theory. And then once you have that solid foundation, you can go ahead, build a product, but make sure when you build the product, don't be too much in the theory, still be practical in your products and your distribution.
Right, for sure. And like expansion is very important, but you need to have a solid foundation in order for like that to work in the long term as well.
Yeah, I have a question because you said you talked to the P2P guys, which ended up being Lido. What do you think Lido did right? What do you think Lido did that made them that caused them to be number one in all of liquid staking and being one of like the most incremental parts of the Ethereum ecosystem today?
Yeah, for sure, for sure. Like, I think in the short term, there was like mostly two things. Like one, they've had a proper theory to product balance, where there's quite a debate. Like these days, it's kind of obvious for the LST protocols to have like a validator whitelist for Ethereum. But like back in those days, like it was actually a thing of big controversy whether like having a whitelist, which is centrally managed, whether that makes sense for such a crucial component of the network. But they went ahead with it, and it was the correct way of doing it at the time. And like while others like sort of took time to really think about it, they were quick to make a conclusion in the right way, it was able to execute on it, and that sort of gave them the ability to sort of scale, onboard a lot of people. So like their adoption strategy was also like quite well thought out. And they properly leveraged like the legal farming strategies to give the initial liquidity for STETH, which is quite important for its like adoption prior to like the withdrawals on ETH being enabled. So that's like the short term, but long term, it's really one thing. They really had the benevolency, and they never deviated away from like keeping like the network decentralized and fair at most of the times. And
Ryan,
yeah, I think
are you there?
that's the part that sort of gave them a lot of value. Oh, can you hear me? Sorry,
Yeah, yeah,
I think I
Yes,
had
yes,
an
you're
issue
back.
there. Sorry,
you're back.
what was the last thing you guys heard?
Benevolency.
Oh yeah. Sorry. Like this power outage that we're having right now, I think they're still trying to recover from it. But I think like the long run, like great thing they did, and that's probably the reason why they're still very strong these days. Is like they had like a very strong foundation of benevolency within like the team, and like even while at Terra, when we were doing Lido on Terra, like they made a strong effort to keep everything fair and decentralized. So like I think that was like the long term value proposition that they properly did.
Got it. Yeah, go ahead, Kent.
No, I mean, go ahead, Dave. Just finish your thought. I want to add on the distribution bit.
Oh, you can go ahead.
Okay, so obviously, Lido grew to its size, but kind of before that, Anchor and Terra, the initial, I guess, LST also grew in size. Like during that crazy growth phase, like were there like some do's and don'ts that you learned, particularly in the distribution and growth part of the product?
Yeah, well, as I was like sort of seeing like the vast amounts of growth happening like day by day and week by week. Well, to be honest, like yeah, like I think for every person sort of like having to manage or like handle such processes and protocols, there's a lot of pressure and like stress to like get the things right. But I think, like I said before, I think it really boils down to like the fundamentals being correct, where like if you're able to sort of verify your technical fundamentals, preferably in a mathematical fashion, that everything works, then you have less of a worry on like the scaling aspects and like things moving forward. While I guess like if your like fundamentals are more market based, which has a lot of uncertainties, then it could be something of a worry on the side. So regarding the strategies like or learnings, you know, yeah, I'll still say like the baseline thing is just keep the technical fundamentals strong as possible, mathematically proven if that's like applicable, as well as just be mindful of like what kind of integrations that you're trying to do or you're trying to engage with. Like there's obviously a lot of actors with benevolent motives, but there's also a lot of other actors that don't really operate on benevolency. So being able to sort of see that and just trusting your gut feeling on like the people working on the other side, yeah, probably is a good strategy to take.
Yeah. And before we Kent, were you going to ask something?
Oh, no. Go ahead, Dave.
Okay. Before we get into the next part, the transition from Anchor to Exponents, I want to ask this question from a tweet you had, and it's something that goes along the lines of your end users are not individual humans, it's capital. You said that in a tweet, and I'm just wondering, what did you mean by that? Can you go into detail about that a bit more?
Yeah, for sure. For actually that question, it's quite straightforward. Like, if you're, so I think the world has operated on an assumption where even for like recent startups up to like 2010s, Like every end user distribution that you wanted to have was just individuals. Probably like the growth of social networks was like a very good proof of this, where each individual, their contribution to the product or platform is pretty much equal in a way of like, the content they produce or like the outreach that they have. Because to be fair, humans, although there's a deviation on like what kind of contributions they provide to society on a monetary value standpoint, it's mostly similar on like a content and distribution level standpoint. Although there's like very like long tail exceptions, of course. But in the case where your application is based, your value proposition of your app comes from the engagement of capital or assets. So it could be in the form of payment applications, or it could be in the form of DeFi or like financial applications. In that case, like the numeric, the unit of value of your user set, it really does not depend on like individual humans. It's like the per dollar value that is being provided by the users. So just need to, like, for those kind of applications, which crypto is, like, a lot of the applications in crypto are great examples of, mostly because crypto is such like a capital intensive like industry. So like in that case, like it makes more sense to sort of put your unit value in capital, like rather than individuals. That does not mean like individual end users don't really matter. Like especially for consumer applications, you're like very much free on this side because you are end users actually individuals. But if you're doing a financial applications standpoint, like just think of existing financial markets. Like it's the dollars that move everything. It's not the people that move the stuff. It's always the invisible hand.
Dollar is king, as they say.
Well, I guess, yeah. Well, I guess for now, but we're
For
driving
now,
towards the
that's what
future where Bitcoin is
capital
king.
is king. That's what I mean. Capital is king.
Yeah, yeah. Like, I mean, like, capital is like an incentive to, like, it's the way how the world operates. So,
Yeah.
I'll follow that.
Okay. And so, all right, let's go back to post anchor. All that stuff happened, and then how'd you go from that to building Exponents?
Right. So, like, after the DPEG happened, which was sort of like a very unexpected process for me, I sort of had a lot of wrong assumptions now that I think about it, and like the wrong data sets on like what Terra was operating on to sort of think about it. But anyhow, it's like after it happened, um, took me quite a bit of time to sort of recover from all the process. But like, of course, there was like the mental guilt. Of course, there's always thoughts about like what could have you done differently, as well as like you also like get to think about like all the lives that changed because of your actions. But yeah, also on the legality front, although it's now over now, like yeah, being through that process for about a year, mostly on recovery and just doing a lot of personal thinkings. But after since that, like, yeah, really decided that it's sort of like I should just try to contribute back to society by building the stuff that I'm, while using the tech or skill sets I do the best. And for me, it was really about being able to see what others look to be very obvious about. And like ever since like even back in like the 2019 days, like I thought financial market models, even for TradFi, was quite static. So if you think about it, like the last major innovation that happened in existing financial markets, I would say it's more than 30 years ago. The last innovation was like the Black-Scholes model and like the options market that sort of came out from that. Of course, after that, people put the financial market on top of the internet, made it faster, but like there was no like
Zero to
model
one.
like innovation at the goal. Right, right.
We're not talking
And
about DeFi. We're talking about finance. There's been no financial innovation in
Yeah.
the past 30
Finance.
years. Finance.
exactly
Okay.
for everything, like, and it's about time to sort of innovate on top of that. So, and like ever since 2019, like I always thought like one of the assumptions that people take in markets is liquidations. Like they think it's so obvious and it's good for the market, but I always sort of disagree for like 5 years now, mostly in two ways. Where first of all, well, I guess like three ways. First of all, liquidations. No trader wants to go through liquidations. It sucks, right? But
Yep.
even from like a macro market point of view, like liquidations are bad because it causes market collusions, right? Short squeezes, by what I
Yep.
mean.
Yep. Yep.
Like it incentivizes people to collude and short like the other side and like for their benefit. And we've already seen that in existing markets, like GME, AMC, like nickel markets a couple years back, already happened. We see it every day on crypto markets. Inclusions in the market, it's always bad. You never want to have that. It's inefficient. And the second part, like it's very simple thinking. Like if you think about it, like in an efficient market, like whenever market volatility goes higher, like the liquidity should increase as well to stabilize the market. But due to liquidation risk, that is not what happens. MMs pull out liquidity and the liquidity thins. So the system we have right now is quite inefficient where you know, in like a very efficient market, the only thing that traders should care about is if the asset is undervalued, like they should long it. If it's overvalued, they should short it. Like external market conditions such as liquidation risk, those should not be a consideration for traders. So like to go back, like since like 2019, I always wanted to tackle this issue. And like it's really when like in 2023 where I had the idea of inverse bonding curves and sort of had a hunch on like how like this could actually be evolved
Oh
to solve
no.
like
Oh
the
no.
market problems I force.
Oh no. Inverse bonding curves.
Okay. Okay. We'll just pick it up from there. If he came back one time, I think he'll come back again.
All right, Ryan. So you're mentioning inverse bonding curves and your interest in it. Can you continue from there?
Yeah, for sure. So it's only when 2023 where I had the idea of inverse bonding curves. So what inverse bonding curves is about is just a regular bonding curve, but inverse market dynamics, where in regular bonding curves and regular markets, like whatever happens is whenever you buy an asset from the market, the price goes up, and whenever you sell to the market, the price goes down. What inverse bonding curves do is they do the exact opposite. They create a market where as the asset is bought, the price goes down, and as the asset is sold, the price goes up. So, and I sort of had a hunch where, like, using this mechanic, it could be possible to achieve like the initial liquidation free market dream I had since 2019. So that's when I really started to put in the efforts to move a working mechanic. And like from then on, became the product of Exponents, which we've been working on since.
Actually, that's a perfect segue there. So, the biggest tagline that I saw with Exponents was about liquidation free, oracle free perp decks. You
Right,
know,
right.
how did what is Exponent and how could you make such bold claims?
For sure, for sure. So let me just do like a quick rundown on what our narrative is about Exponents. So to get a proper understanding of Exponents, it's really two things. Like, so starting from the technical side, we enable Oracle-free perps, starting with power perps, and we use a Uniswap like spot arbitrage mechanism for our price pegs, which is very different from the traditional way of doing perps. Like that is about using funding rates for the price peg. So this part is what allows like the leverage on all assets. And just before we go into like the mechanics or like a brief understanding on how the Oracle free stuff works and the liquidation free stuff works, I would like to stress that although the leverage on all aspects, all assets aspect is cool, like at least for the short to midterm strategy, it's actually not our center point of focus. That what we're trying to do here at the core is we've realized that once you have a marketplace that allows leverage on all assets, you can now create an incentive marketplace on top where different protocols could be enhancing their outreach of their token. So basically that you could have a marketplace where what we actually realized or what we're trying to do actually, at least for the short to midterm, is we realized that if you have a marketplace that allows leverage on all assets, you can now create an incentive market where on top, where protocols could be enhancing their outreach of the token. So basically, like we're giving them an ability to provide direct token incentives for traders to take directional bets on specific tokens. So like with this being said, I guess just to go back into like the technicals on how the Oracle free peg works, I would say, although I could go into details on the math and stuff, I know that's gonna be super boring, so I'll skip that. I'll go to the easy explanation of just think of Uniswap, just like how Uniswap achieves a price similarity with external markets through spot arbitrage, the Exponents pretty much does the same. The only difference here is we also extend the pricing so that we could also price the derivatives as well. And for manipulation issues, like we resolve it in a pretty straightforward manner, like where like there could be a manipulation attempt where you open a long, you do a spot buy to increase the price, you close the long and you sell whatever you bought, like in order to sort of try the manipulation. Like there's very easy way to avoid this where you just need to have the derivative position openings and closures to also have an effect on the spot price as well, in a way that if such a manipulation cycle flow attempt were to be done, if you land on like the original market values and if the potential attacker does not yield any profit, then you have a working system. So like this is how we achieve like the Oracle free peg without the use of price oracles. So like, yeah, like that's like one of the parts that we're doing. And like for this Oracle free peg, the math sort of works out in a way that it is able to create or issue pricing for power perpetuals. So power perpetuals, just for the context, it's a derivative type where like they offer exponentiated exposures on top of like a pricing of a pair. So say, for example, if there were to be like Ethereum to USD, there could be a power perpetual where it's Ethereum squared. And in that case, that Ethereum squared power perpetual will move its price in a way that whenever the price of Ethereum doubles, the price of the Ethereum squared would halve. Oh, sorry about that. Whenever the price of Ethereum were to double, the price of Ethereum squared would quadruple, and vice versa. If the price of the Ethereum were to halve, the price of Ethereum squared would go down to its 1/4. So yeah, the math checks out in a way that it's Oracle free, while at the same time it offers power perpetuals, which are also liquidation free since the payoff never goes negative. And yeah, I guess that sort of explains it for like the mechanic side of things.
So
there's definitely more stuff that we could like discuss, but
yes. I mean, we definitely got to unpack that because, frankly, I consider myself pretty in the loop. I was definitely out of the loop on that one. So let's go all the way back to spot arbitrage. What you mean by spot arbitrage, just like a Uniswap pool, is when there is a pricing imbalance between the two tokens in the Uniswap pool, there is some arbitrager out there that would come in and rebalance it, right? That's what you mean by spot arbitrage, correct?
Exactly. So if you think about it, like the way how traditional perps work is it has an indirect correlation with the underlying spot market. And arbitrages must come in to sort of arb away between spot and perps to keep the price big, like with the funding considerations all included. you can sort of understand this in a way that we're merging the spot and the perp market into a single market,
Okay.
in a way that just by interacting with the spot market, you also have an effect on the derivative pricings as well.
Okay, so I think a best illustration of this actually is probably a life cycle of a position. Could you kind of walk me through, like, what is it like for me to put on a long position? Like just a regular long position, and then we'll add all the leverage in the second example.
Right. So in that case, it'll be quite straightforward. You'll let's say you just go to the UI, for example, and then you just input the pair that you want to long or short,
Okay.
and you just input the value that you want to use for the longs or shorts. You select the leverage if you want, and then that's how you get the exposure. You're just buying a tokenized form of the position that represents the par perpetual
Right,
here.
but somebody needed to, let's say I wanted
And
to get long BTC USD in this BTC USD pool. Then does that mean that I have to I put USD into the pool and then I take out BTC? Is it like a limit order book, like a club style, or is it more of a AMM style? Like, how is that position filled?
yeah, so it's definitely AMM based.
Okay.
So everything should be market orders.
Okay.
So you're not buying a leverage spot position. You're buying a synthetic representation of the leverage position. So
Okay.
yeah, it's not that you're buying a leveraged or a higher quantity of BTC for that case. You're buying a representation as if you're buying BTC on
Okay,
leverage.
got it. So it basically creates, let's say I did not want to do leverage. I just want to do a spot swap. Basically, BTC is called 60K, right? I do a 60K swap with USD, but I don't get one BTC. I have a synthetic position that represents one BTC's payoff chart. Okay.
Exactly. And if you want, you can have different
Yeah.
leverage
So let's
values
add
for
that
it.
in now. Let's
And
add that in
everything is
now.
synthetic.
So this is the AMM. So somebody needed to provide like liquidity into it, right? Do people just provide just USD liquidity, like just some collateral type to back it up? To as long as there's a price value to it.
Right. There's mostly two parts where first you gotta consider pricing mechanism side of stuff.
Okay.
And then of course we want to keep every position collateralized. So there's also liquidity for collateralization. So for the pricing mechanism part, it works in a way that's very similar to a regular XYK
Okay.
AMM. So if you want to create a pair, you just supply the assets of the pair that you want to create a market for. So in this case,
Okay.
if it's BTC to USDC, you just provide the two assets to
Okay.
create a pair. For the collateralization side, it's either it's either only BTC or USDC that you were to provide, and that is utilized to provide the collateralization of the positions.
So if I wanted to do a BTC long, obviously I have to put USDC in, and then I have a synthetic BTC long. So the quantity of BTC in this AMM pool from the initial people who LP'd does not change, right? Like the BTC is still in there. Is that correct?
So the mathematics sort of work differently, where the total value sort of retains the same. It's just that it's reallocated within the protocol, where the pool composition, since it represents the derivative pricing as well, that also sort of differs as you make a purchase on the derivative price on a derivative position.
Okay, sure. So let's work through this with an example. I think it is kind of best because this is really high level, and I would love it. I mean, our audience are pretty deep on this stuff as well too, but I feel like you are going into the nether realms right now, and I need some guidance here, Ryan. All right, so when I put on this position and I have USDC, I want a long BTC, right? And I just want spot exposure to it. I come to Exponent and I open a position. I put my USDC down as collateral, and then I create a synthetic BTC position from that collateral, right?
Actually, not. Like, you're not putting your initial value input as collateral.
Okay.
You're just purchasing the synthetic position. So, like, it's different from like putting
Okay.
something up as collateral.
So where does that
You're
USDC
just,
go then? Does it go
purchase-
into the same pool?
It goes into the it goes in the AMM pool, right?
Yeah, it first goes into the
Okay.
AMM pool, and later on it goes to the collateralization part to like collateralize the payoff that you just
so
purchased.
let's stick with that example. All right, let's say in this pool right now, there's literally only 60,000 USDC and then 1 Bitcoin in this pool. I come in with 60K USDC. I want to buy. I shove in 60K USDC. Now the pool is 120,000 USDC and 1 BTC, right? Because I technically didn't take out that 1 BTC because I have a synthetic position of that 1 BTC. Am I correct so far?
Yes and no, in a way that like okay, this is gonna sound complicated, but within the pricing liquidity pool, which serves pricing mechanism, like the calculations are done exactly the same as an XRP swap. So if you were to put in the extra 60K USDC, then according to the XYK mathematics, like the 0.5 like BTC, that would actually be siphoned away from the pricing liquidity, away to the collateralization part of stuff. And that exactly would be used to collateralize the payoff that you purchased.
Okay, gotcha. So the BTC does indeed leave the pool, but it doesn't go to me. It goes into the pricing mechanism that you just said.
Right, the pricing and collateralization
mechanism. Yeah. Okay, got it. All right. So now at this, Dave, are you following along too?
I'm following. So I get the AMM part. So what is this collateralization mechanism? Where does that like live? Because like I have a good conception of like, you know, X times Y equals K, but like I guess the collateralization, can you go into that a little bit more?
For sure. Like, just to start off, like, I think a basic understanding would be to somewhat consider it similar to GMX, where whenever a position is opened, like the position would be collateralized within using a separate pool of external LP liquidity, which in this case would be called collateral liquidity. But there's a bit of a difference where instead of requiring to fully collateralize the entire payoff or the entire position, so let's say, for example, simply you do a 10x long with 1 ETH, then you're creating a 10 ETH position, right? In the case where you're trying to collateralize the entire position, then you have an instant 10 ETH consumption for the collateralization. But in our case, you can make it different if you only require the potential payout, not the potential payout, like the actual profits of the payoff to be collateralized. So like whenever, like if there's no initial price volatility, then 1 ETH in this case is all you need to collateralize the position. And as the pricing volatility occurs, like you will need to collateralize a increasing portion of the collateral liquidity within the protocol.
Got it. So here I think is the key part that we got to really talk about is this is the focus on the payoff, not the principal balance of it. Meaning that when I bought this 1 BTC, and it doesn't mean that somebody out there owes a 60K exposure. No. It's only when BTC price goes up by $1. Now somebody out there has to make that payoff. Somebody has to put up collateral for that $1 for me because now I am in the green. Somebody has to be in the red, right? So it's that $1 that needs to be collateralized.
Right, exactly. But just to say, this only applies to the initial version. So you can actually go even further from here.
Take me deeper into the nether realms.
Iteration.
Nether
realms. Let's do it. So like I would say like the biggest benefit of having a structure like this is since you're not basing the payoff to require like a spot lending on the underlying, you like it's more like synthetic positions that you're creating. And the benefit you can really see here is for synthetic positions, you're able to match the payoff of longs with the payoff of shorts. So what you could do even further is if you were to match the payoff of longs with shorts, you can make it even more scalable to theoretically an infinite degree. Where external liquidity, although for the initial version, it sort of is required to collateralize all positions, although it's still at a more capital efficient manner than like previous methods. Later iteration would be to only collateralize the difference of value between, let's say, like the profits of longs versus the loss of the shorts. So that's how we sort of plan to make everything like infinitely scalable.
Okay, so let's unpack that. Right, it's like you're painting a lot of end state pictures, but I'm literally stuck in like the early state of how this. Yeah,
Stuck in
yeah.
another
So
realm.
then, for me, the way I'm thinking about this is I understand that the payoff needs to be collateralized, not the position. So that was a kind of unlock in understanding for me. The second portion is, but somebody needs to take on the other side of my trade, right? When I created this synthetic long, is somebody synthetic short, or am I just playing it against like the whole collateral pool of the protocol? Like the protocol is my counterparty.
Well, to some degree, it's a matter of both because it's for the protocol, it's somewhat someone external providing that
Sure, sure.
liquidity to be the counterparty,
Right.
and so in that case, like the protocol is just like a facilitator to match like the traders with the counterparties, which are the liquidity providers in this case.
Okay. Okay. I understand that part. And then for the long position that I just entered into one BTC long. Now I want to leverage it, right? How much, is there like a max leverage that I can go to? Because technically I only have to put up the collateral that is whenever the position goes against me is what I need to put on collateral. I technically don't even need to put on any collateral in the very beginning because the payoff or the profit at that point is zero.
Right. So theoretically, there's no maximum leverage
Right.
on the theory side, but for protocol safety side, at the moment, we're deciding to cap it off at like a power perp of like a price to the power of 5, for example.
So what does that mean? Power of 5. So that's pretty high, right?
Yeah, it'll be pretty high because whenever the price of it like Ethereum doubles, like you like the derivative of like Ethereum to the power of 5, that'll just go up by 32x.
32x. Right. Okay. Okay. I see. So here's the math that kind of confuses me. So to the power of 5 equals 32x. Is that the way to think about it?
Right, because you're taking a 2 to the power of 5,
2 to the power. Okay,
which is
understood.
32.
Gotcha. Okay. Okay. Right. Right. 2 to the power 1 is 2x leverage, and 2 to the power of 2 is 4x leverage, and then so forth and so on. And that's kind of how you got to 2 to the power of 5 is 32x leverage. That is the max for any position at any time. So then, when I want to put on a long BTC position now, how much collateral do I need to put on right from the beginning?
So you just need to put in the amount that will represent like your purchased value of your payoff, like at the starting price
so
point.
let's say I put in $1,000 and I crank this thing up to 32x leverage. All right. Now, after I go 32x leverage, as BTC drops by $1, I'm down $32. So when BTC drops down by $30, I'm pretty much at my liquidation, or I'm at my liquidation level, or I need to add more collateral. Is that right?
No, actually no, because like like if you go through like how if you go through and think about like how power perps sort of work, it only offers a payoff which is a power of like the underlying pair's price. So like if you're taking a power on a price, like that value would never go negative.
I didn't get that, Dave. Did you get
So
that?
in this case,
It will never go negative.
Yeah.
Can you explain that a bit more?
So let's say you're doing a BTC to the
Yeah.
power of 5. Like as you said, like if the price of BTC were to double, in that case, like it would, like the position value would go up by 32x. But for the other way around, like you would be taking a 0.5 to the power of 5, which is 1 over 32.
Okay. Right.
So that would be your position value. So it's not that it's not like a linear payoff of 32x. It's an exponential payoff that is being offered, at least for the initial version.
Exponential.
I know. That's why, dude. This is
Exactly.
so
You got the
over
wording.
my head.
There we go.
This is so over my head, and it's so interesting to me. Yeah. So Ryan, like, let's just get down deep into the mechanics. Like, could you explain to us like how the magic works?
Sure thing. So first thing to understand is the payoff that we initially offer is going to be power perps. So power perps, for those that do not know, it's a derivative type that offers exponential exposures on prices. So say, for example, you have a Bera to USD price pair, and you could have something like Bera squared or Bera cubed or Bera to the power of -1. Those are all examples of power perps. So in the case of Bera squared, like it would work, its pricing and valuation would work in a way that in the case of Bera's price doubling, the price of Bera squared would quadruple, and vice versa. If the price of Bera were to halve, the price of Bera squared would go down to 1/4 of its original value. So although we will be offering like different, more trader-friendly position types in the future, that's what we're starting with, and that is like where the basis of the Oracle-free pricing mechanism comes from. And to sort of understand or get a sense of like how we issue those power perps without any use of oracles, try to go back to like the initial like concept that we brought up with inverse bonding curves. So inverse bonding curves, like as I said before, it's a way of issuing an asset that goes down in price as minted and goes up in price as burnt. So you have an asset that follows the inverse market dynamics of a regular asset. Like regular assets, if you buy, the price goes up, and if you sell, the price goes down. So like the interesting thing here is if you were to analyze the arbitrage characteristics, or what will happen if you were to get that inverse dynamic asset minted through an inverse bonding curve, of course, and you were to list that on a regular XYK AMM, which functions in a regular way. So on the AMM, or for example, Uniswap, like the listed asset, if you were to buy over there, as you buy, the price goes up, and as you sell, the price goes down, right? And like the arbitrage mechanics between the two, like arbitrage always works in a way that you buy from the cheap market and then you sell in the expensive market. And generally what happens is the cheap market's price goes up in value, and then the expensive market's price goes down in value. Like, so they converge in opposite directions. But in this case, what happens is, let's say if the token's price on the inverse bonding curve is lesser than the token's price on the AMM listing, in this case, you buy or mint on the inverse bonding curve, and then you sell on the AMM. But what happens here is as you mint on the inverse bonding curve, since it has inverse market dynamics, the price goes down there. And as you sell on the AMM, the price also goes down there as well. And vice versa. Like if the price on the inverse bonding curve is higher than the price on the AMM, like both market prices would go up through arbitrage. So you have a unique arbitrage system here where the arbitrage as a result shows unidirectional price behaviors, like instead of like the counterside market behaviors that you see in regular arbitrage. So how we leverage this feature is, let's say for example you want to create a Bera to USD like inverse token, like Bera to USD to the power of -1. How we do this is we differ the quote denominations of the inverse bonding curve market as well as like the in protocol AMM market where the same token is listed. So let's say you could only buy and or mint and burn like such tokens on the inverse bonding curve only using USDC or Honey or any other stable. And you can only buy on the in protocol AMM using Bera. So what this causes is it causes the token's price on the AMM to now be denominated in the Bera to USD price. And that means whenever the Bera to USD price moves or fluctuates, the token's price denominated in USD also fluctuates on the AMM as well. So say for example, the Bera to USD price increases, you now have a situation where the token's price on the AMM is now higher than the token's price on the inverse bonding curve, because inverse bonding curve's quote denomination was USD or Honey, it remains the same. And you have a situation where like the inverse bonding curve's token pricing is now lower than the AMM's pricing. And following the previous rule of arbitrage, where in such cases both market prices go down, you have a system where just by a volatility of like the Bera to USD price going up, you have the token price to go down, basically show an inverse behavior, and vice versa. It works in the opposite way, where if the Bera to USD price were to go down, the arbitrage mechanics sort of work in a way that the token's price goes up for both markets, thereby establishing a inverse correlation, or like the original Bera to USD to the -1 power that we wanted to achieve. So like by adjusting the price curves, like curvatures of both the inverse bonding curve and the AMM that we have, like you're able to achieve a price peg of any value of any pair to the power of any value exponent. So you're able to achieve a price peg to price to the power of n being any kind of number that you can put in. So whether it's -1, like power of 2, power of 3, this is like the mechanic details that sort of allow all of this to happen. But as always, I would say like the simplest way to sort of understand this is just think of it as similar to Uniswap. Like just like how Uniswap achieves a price similarity with external markets through spot arbitrage, we sort of do the same here. Like the arbitrage you see between the inverse bonding curve and AMM, effectively it's like a spot asset swap. So the same thing happens here. The only difference being is that we also extended pricing not just for spot assets, but for the pricing of the R power perpetuals as well. So that's like a basic explanation of how we issue power perpetuals without any use of oracles. But I guess just to cap off, like what we also figured out is you could also use a combination or like a series of different power perps to replicate any kind of payoff you want. So we fully understand that like power perps from like a trader's point of view, it's not really like the best to interact with. Like the payoffs are much more complicated than like the leverage you see on Binance. Like it's not linear, it's exponential. But for now, for the short term, we're not really worried about it because like the incentives for using the power perps are pretty clear. If you're paid too long or paid too short, then you definitely have a reason to sort of use it. Like which wasn't the case for previous power perpetual protocols. But as said before, the second iteration, it's going to use a combination of these positions to replicate a payoff that is more linear to the upside, while you still have the capped downside of being liquidation free. So this sort of covers like what we are doing like with power perpetuals, as well as like how things are going to look forward.
Got it. And for the end user, instead of having to figure out all this complicated math, they just know that, hey, am I getting ETH squared or ETH to the cubed or ETH to the fifth power, right? Like that is what the end user's position would look like. So they don't have to worry about all of this. And then the obviously the profit and loss calculations will be all done for them, and they don't have to worry about liquidation costs. So they don't really have to, worry about liquidation costs.
Exactly. So, you're just buying a payoff. It's not that you're putting or creating a CDP like for like a synthetic position. Like for the users or traders, you'll just have the experience of interacting with an AMM, for example. You just supply the asset you want to purchase with, and you get the payoff you want, whether it's Ethereum squared, Ethereum to the power of -1. It could be famous, popular pair trades, like it could be ETH to BTC inverses. It could be Sol to ETH inverses. Or if you want to short like the VC chains, it could be some high FTV token inverse, so on and so forth.
Yep. Very cool. Very cool. And I guess a final question is like, when are you guys thinking of launching this?
It's a good question. Well, I guess the bigger question here is when is Bera Chain launching?
When launch?
Well, if Smokey, if you are listening to this podcast, please give us a date. I beg for it. But mostly joking, but yeah. Assuming
JK, unless.
True. Well, I guess like assuming like Bera Chain launch is happening soon. Yeah. If it happens soon, then we also won't take long to get on the network as well. We're like almost pretty much prepared to get our product out, including the bribing mechanics from day one as well.
Well, I feel like from here, like there's a lot going on, but I kind of want to get into like more of like here's my question. Two of your co-founders were from Fidelity. And I'm just curious if like the TradFi world institutions, how did you convince them to join? And how do they view DeFi from an institutional lens? And from, their feedback and other people you talk to, like, what do you think the goals are for institutions in crypto?
So I guess like from the data points I've collected, which doesn't really represent like those institutions directly, like they're very cautious about their words, as you guys already know. But I also think there's a very big imbalance on what the crypto natives consider like TradFi institutions to be a state at, as vice versa. Like same for like the other side around as well. So like from some of the data points, like I would say aside from like the ETFs, which have already happened and are ongoing, if I were to be in their place, like it would be majorly three things of interest for things. First one, of course, would be tokenization, where you put a tokenized representation of the exogenous assets that you have, and you make that tradable on top of, let's say, an L2 or a chain that you issued. The second one of interest would be mostly on like on-chain yield opportunities. So there's a big imbalance between the yield offered in TradFi versus what the yield values are being offered in DeFi or like on-chain. So an arbitrage between the two, they'll definitely find that as something of interest as well. And surprisingly, the last part would be mostly about like yield splitting. So one of the biggest markets that they view is like the separation of yield and principal. So if there were to be a yield bearing asset, which is the case for a lot of like securities, like they would definitely have a lot of interest on like such markets that split the yield with the principal. But altogether, that sort of means that, starting with the tokenization side, they will definitely have a lot of interest on integrating with existing DeFi mechanisms and really apply the structures that they innovated on and have somewhat been proven within the crypto market to sort of improve their like financial infrastructure as well, all on chain. And another thing that I would say is like TradFi is actually quite knowledgeable than what a lot of like crypto people think. So they actually understand a lot of the crypto mechanics that happen. For example, they understand all the different types of AMMs and the mathematics on how they work, like the XYK, like Uniswap V3, the curve, AMM, they all understand the differences. They understand how token bridges work. They understand how O2s work. They understand how consensus mechanisms work. And that's why there's actually, like, my personal opinion is there is a pretty good chance that they would end up issuing a chain, whether it's L2s or Cosmos chains, like probably within a cycle or two. And they'll put up their own tokenized securities on top, as well as the DeFi mechanisms to sort of facilitate the flows.
Yeah, so like we could see JP Morgan chain or something coming in the next cycle or two. Not JP Morgan specifically, but something of that regard.
Well, yeah, I think it's like one of their, it would be something of their interest, from my personal opinion.
So I'm curious. So they understand all this stuff, and it's funny because we're like everyone always says, "Oh, like the institutions are coming. Once the institutions come, like our bags will be saved." Blah blah blah. But like DeFi is still struggling, and I feel like that's just because crypto is so narrative driven. I'm curious, like, what do you think? Like, how do institutions view DeFi in its present state, especially considering like how markets are?
Well, they're sort of like observing at this point where, like, well, to be fair, like a lot of the efforts that they could push out within the company and within the firm, like I would say the primary blocker, most people would say it's regulations, but in my opinion, it's actually like internal company politics that they need to resolve to get initiatives forward. And, as for any initiative that you put in within any company, you need a strong enough rationale to convince others to work on it and get started on it. And, that means DeFi needs to have good enough performance on the like on-chain space. Same for crypto in general as well. And, for financial ecosystems, during the cases, whenever asset values go up, like financial applications also thrive as well. So if there were to be a recovery on the markets or all-time highs, and if DeFi could ride properly on top of that, it will definitely be a driver for a lot of those internal politics to get resolved, in my opinion.
Yeah, number go up. That fixes everything. So it's not just external.
I did not say that. I did not say that.
No, I said that. I said that. So it's, people think external politics regulation is a blocker, but no, there's a lot of shit that happens internally, internal politics. That's a blocker as well. Got it. And I'm curious, like, why do you believe in DeFi? And I know I just talked about institutions, but like, where do you see DeFi heading and unfolding in the next few years?
Right. So, like, the primary use of DeFi, it really stems from like a theoretical thesis where, first of all, you got to understand like why finance is useful in like the real economy as well. I know a lot of people have doubts on finance as a field. Like they think it's just like a speculative market and everything's just like, it's like rich take money from the poor. But I have a different opinion where, like, if you think about it, everything that people do, every work that is being done, it's always two things. You plan first and then you execute on stuff. And in the macro, if you expand it to the macro economy, the planning stuff, that is driven by finance. So whenever, for example, if a goods price were to increase, like the economies would be allocating more resources for to produce more of that goods to like meet the demand and the new prices. And, execution in this case would be on the manufacturing part. So that's why I think like finance is really valuable. And with that being said, like you need to combine that with how you think like blockchains and crypto have value by itself. So I know a lot of people have opinions where like blockchains and crypto, it's really about openness and decentralization. I agree that's something of value as well, but I would also argue it's probably not the biggest value provider. I would say like the biggest reasons for blockchain would be cost efficiency. So like if you put up a scenario where like you either have a centralized system or a decentralized system, centralized system, one computer doing all the work, and there's a chance of an error happening for that computer. And whenever an error happens, a human needs to go in and then, fix the problem. So there's human labor costs. On a decentralized version of that, you run the same software on multiple nodes or computers. So the computing costs are higher, but like the chances of error and human intervention are much more lower. So if you compare the cost of both, and if you also think in the modern world where the cost of computing is going down exponentially every year, while the cost of human labor is increasing by the year as well. Like minimum wage going up is a good example. Like, and you end up in some state or some time where just doing the duplicate work through a computer is actually more cheaper than putting in the efforts of a human and risking the chance of error. And so I think blockchains are really about an efficient way, a more cost efficient way of managing a database. And that data could be financial data, it could be application data. And in the case of financial data, that'll be DeFi. So that's why I think finance has value. And I think why DeFi has value. And I think it was just gonna move on from like a product standpoint. Like their TradFi is just gonna think of this as an opportunity to observe what new mechanism approaches that they could sort of integrate into their systems to improve the planning efficiencies of the financial world.
Got it. That's an interesting point you brought up there, how computing costs are going down. And because computing costs are going down, then blockchains themselves and how much it costs to run them will become cheaper. I actually haven't thought of that, but that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, so I think like blockchains, it's like a representation of the societal change that like the human society is going through.
Yeah. And finance is planning. I mean, like, look at the Fed. They plan the cost of money in those fucking hearings. So, and I was going to ask, so, we talked about DeFi a bit and we talked about exponents. I want to go back to both of them. Like, so you said the end goal of exponents is to break DeFi and TradFi's current rigid assumptions and thereby build a new market model for capital efficiency. Can you go into this statement a bit more?
Right, for sure. So I would say a lot of the assumptions that people have on financial markets, which a lot of people think are unbreakable and like very natural rules, I have a disagreement there on like quite a few of the rules written on existing financial markets are actually artificial rules employed by the exchange. So in the case for order books, it's very natural, people think. But for example, like the FIFO execution rule, first in, first out execution rule, is like an artificial rule that's employed by the exchange. And those are rules that you could break. But I guess like the rule I want to break here is really about people thinking liquidations are an efficient market mechanic. And we want to prove to the world that liquidation-free markets are a more exact way of doing asset valuations. And that's why we're doing Exponents.
Got
And
it.
actually, that's a really good segue into, back to the Exponent product you mentioned in our private chat earlier was DeFi has figured out how to incentivize liquidity to the umpteenth degree, but no one has ever touched on the other element of crypto and DeFi, and that is speculation. There has never been a product to incentivize speculation. And you said you kind of had creating a market for this. Can you kind of unpack that for us?
For sure. So it's very simple. The ideology there is if you go to like the real fundamentals of everything in crypto, if you think about it, there's only two ways of interacting within a crypto market. It's always either you provide liquidity or you speculate on tokens. And go back a couple years to like 2020, 2021, like all the things that happened with DeFi summer, like yield farming, like which brought like billions of liquidity and got like the cycle going. like that was only possible because people built incentive layers for liquidity, which by itself is yield farming. But our thinking there was, why hasn't anyone really thought about building an incentive layer for the other type of interaction that people could do, which is the speculation part. And this is the part we're trying to tap into, where if and only if you have a market for a permissionless market for leverage on all assets, you can now create an incentive marketplace where protocols could be enhancing their outreach by incentivizing people to long their own token. While if they really want to crush their competitors, they could incentivize people to short their competitors' token. So we're bringing in a new dimension to the incentives game within the ecosystem. That's what we're trying to do. But I guess overall, to sort of sum it up on the incentives front, we're trying to financialize the tribalism in crypto. We understand crypto is always going to be tribalistic. We understand that there's always going to be similar protocols competing for the same network and the same user base. But the options that protocols have these days it's really inefficient. They always need to go through the social place. Well, of course, aside from building a good product, they go on Twitter, they hype up their own product and community, they shit on the works of others and other communities. It's a bit barbaric, to be honest. We think this should instead be a capital game of sorts, where
financial warfare
basically
is what you're creating right here.
The financialization of crypto tribalism.
Exactly. And it really happens in the real world. Uber crushed Lyft with capital. We're just trying to bring that on chain, available for everyone.
Does this will this give whales more power? This already happens in the background. I feel like you just don't see it, but this is just bringing it in front and transparent. You can see different communities trying to crush each other, saying let's all bribe to short X token, and then boom. But I wonder if you have a whale or something, some anonymous whale that just wants to destroy somebody, they can easily just do that. Damn, that's crazy.
Yeah, but they could do that already.
Yeah,
a whale could
they can do that already.
This is just using the common folks or the retail money to come and destroy your enemy instead of having to deploy your own capital. But actually,
this is the real democratization.
Actually, Ryan, you brought up a good point about the existing. Right now, we have to activate social channels and this social dynamic in order to do a price. Hopefully, right? All these Twitter Spaces, all these X posts that all the founders are doing are basically trying to move this price. But you're productizing that, and because you're right, it's very barbaric, very crude, and it's we're caveman using these tools and trying to affect a result, whereas you were going to create a market for it. Have you given thought to the social implications of this tool, of because it's going to be very public, right? It's going to be hey, XYZ is putting X tokens to incentivize this market on the short side, right? I think that if it...
Right.
Yeah, go ahead.
So actually, what I think is, if this were to work out, it's probably going to happen in two different phases. So remember that you can either incentivize the longs or you could incentivize the shorts. I think initially a lot of people would be scared to put up incentives on their competitors, because that's declaring a war on your competitors, right? Starting a fight. So it's going to take a bit of a time for someone to pull the trigger on that. So initially, everyone's just going to focus on incentivizing the longing of their own stuff. And although incentives are not perpetual, if they're able to bring forward future value and make use of the value in the present day, in a productive fashion, that's also a good thing. So, imagine there being meme coins allocating a percentage supply of their tokens just as incentives for people to long their own meme coin. And, it's going to be probably the same as what happened with Yearn Finance with yield farming. Even back in the days when people saw the success of Yearn Finance utilizing the aspect of yield farming, once there was a single example of that success, like everyone else like tried to do the same as well. And from then on,
then
like
you got
everyone else-
Yam, and then you got
Yeah,
Sushi.
and dude, fast forward to a more recent example, Telegram clicker games, right? Like the Telegram little mini app things are just been blowing up, particularly in the game space. If you're in Web3 games, like you got to have a Telegram strategy now. It's like back then when AI came on, it's like, what is your AI strategy? Right now, it's like, what is your Telegram strategy? So yeah.
Yeah. Brian, I'll let you finish your point.
Oh, I see. Yeah. So I think that's gonna be the first like phase of like how like things are gonna operate with the incentives. The second phase is like where it would get like very battly, where will start declaring wars and stuff. So like the thinking here is like for any startup, including crypto, there's always going to be a supply of high ego founders that want to crush their competitors with any means. And the funny part here is if you have an incentive marketplace like where you could short or incentivize the shorting of your competitors, like when you're being attacked by a competitor putting up incentives for people to short you, you have no other option but to also participate in the game as well. Like, so one person pulling the trigger on like the incentive games for shorts is going to force everyone else to participate as well. It's a bit like advertising, right? If no one does it, that's okay. But if even one person does it, everyone else must do it as well.
It sounds like the curve wars, but for derivatives.
I don't know. I'm even more excited, bro. Like imagine, you know how in NATO they have this policy that if you go to war with one country, you go to war with all the countries.
You go war with all
like
them.
imagine now you pit ecosystem against ecosystem, and it's just like just imagine.
I mean, you're definitely gonna have proxy wars. Yeah. Like I can't see the protocols going like at it directly at first. You're probably gonna have like maybe like some cowboy capital or investors or funds that do it on behalf of the protocol. And then say like, oh, we're just doing it because like blah, blah, blah. But, there's some other motive. Like, unless like things get like really dire, and then some like world war, like chain war scenario happens. I'd see it like being proxy at first. So but this is what makes this the Uniswap moment. Honestly, it's like because think about how many times we've heard like a protocol say this is the Uniswap moment for this or that, and like it's never it. But it's not the mechanism that makes the Uniswap moment. It's the game. It's the incentives. And Ryan has created the field for this game to be played. And before it's just like, oh, like providing liquidity, like that was the game. Pool 2, that was the original game. But here the game is much
leverage
more,
tribalism.
I guess combative. Leverage crypto tribalism. Yeah. That's crazy.
Yeah, that's so meta. Like that's so good.
Yeah, this is making me pumped to like for the Bera Chain launch when that happens, because you guys are building on Bera Chain at first, and I'm curious, what is it like building in the Bera Chain ecosystem? And I feel like this product has a very unique fit in that ecosystem.
Yeah, for sure. So like there's majorly 3 different reasons where we find ourselves like very fitting with Bera. Like the first 2 are quite obvious. Like Bera, especially Smokey and MVP and others within the team, has been very supportive of like all the applications to make them to succeed and get adoption. They provide all the intros and like whatever support that you'll need to make things happen. But the second point, so like that's very good. Like second point is like the POL game. That would also be interesting. Although to be fair, it is a bit of a gamble on how it's going to work out. Like if it works out, it's going to be a very efficient and effective way of gathering the critical mass of liquidity to make all of these market mechanics to work. And the third point is more on the ideology front, where you need, well, if POL works out, like remember that there's only 2 interactions that you could do in crypto markets. It's always about liquidity or speculation. And POL if it works, it's going to be the incentive layer for liquidity. We're going to be filling in the other side of the spectrum by being the incentive layer for speculation. So for users, they'll get the full incentivization of any interactions they could do in the crypto market, at least starting from Bera. And, even for like the incentive games, like we need like a highly experimental community that is willing to try out and get it kickstarted. And Bera is also very fitting in that sense as well.
Got it. So Bera basically has the liquidity layer covered, which is, part of the chicken egg problem. So set if a PL works out. And then what you guys are building is the speculation layer on top of it. And that's where the real fun begins.
Exactly. So for users, they can maximize their risk and reward ratios based on the liquidity and speculation they're doing.
Got it. And now I want to, sum up this like whole interview. Like I know we got really deep into the weeds, into the numbers, into the definitions. But in 2 sentences, can you sum up what Exponents is, what you're doing, and what ultimately your goals are with Exponents?
Right. So I'm not sure whether it's going to be 2 sentences, but to give you an idea, we are enabling oracle-free and liquidation-free positions for every market out there. And our adoption strategy is to create a bribing market on top where you could financialize your tribalism in crypto to maximize your adoption chance of adoption. And we want, on a macro front, we want to use that as a strategy to prove to the world that liquidation-free markets are a more efficient way of valuing assets. And our goal is TradFi integration. So we want to go all the way.
Go all the way. So this is a war on liquidations. This is basically saying, fuck you, liquidations. You're not an efficient way for markets to determine themselves. We're going to create a better model without liquidations.
Yep, exactly.
Yep. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, got it. I think that wraps up all the questions on my end.
Nope,
Kit,
I think there's a good place to add.
Nope, that's it.
To wrap.
Yeah, and so before we go, we always ask this question at the end of interviews to our guest. Who do you want to see on Flywheel? Who would you recommend as a guest?
That's a good question, actually. Have you guys had Smokey before?
Yeah.
Yeah, we've had him on. Yep.
I see.
Anybody you want.
Yeah, let me think on that, actually. It's a very good question.
This is how we source our guests.
We're making the guests do work for us.
Yeah.
Well, at least what I said within the podcast was really about DeFi getting integration to TradFi.
Mm-hmm.
Would it be possible for you guys to get a TradFi person that's leading crypto efforts within to be on the call and share his thoughts?
Yeah, I'll take that. Yeah, we should find someone we had Alston Campbell on a while ago, but I'm down to get someone else that maybe is currently leading an effort. Maybe did you see what Visa announced today? They announced they're going to allow tokenization. They're looking into tokenization on Ethereum, tokenizing assets in 2 years. So getting that guy on would be pretty cool. But that's a good suggestion. But Ryan, where can people find you online? Where can people learn more about Exponents?
For sure. Yeah. Well, I'm always down to discussions on the mechanism and what we're doing, or just anything else in DeFi or crypto in general. So both my Telegram as well as Twitter handles just at Ryanology045. I'm pretty sure you guys will tag that account as well. So whether it's DMs or whether it's anything else, just don't make it included into a scam post. And I'm happy to chat there.
Cool.
All right. Thanks, Ryan. And we hope to see you soon.
Talk soon.
Likewise. Yeah. Thank you guys for having me.
All right, everybody. Welcome to the post-game show. I'm your host, DeFi Dave, here with Capital K, rounding off an episode with Exponents. Man, this was deep. This got real deep in this one, and there's a lot going on here. You have his past, his history. He has quite the resume. How he's come around to build Exponents, how Exponent works. Really fascinating stuff, and I think we ended on a high note talking about the bribing markets.
Yeah, 100%, bro. Like my brain actually went inversed on this podcast.
The inverse bonding curve.
Yeah. My brain was an inverse bonding curve, I had inverse brain curve. But I feel like Ryan is definitely cooking something, and he has the background to back it up with the math as well. So then I was like, okay, you know what? I'm just going to trust the math. And the second bit, though, is the unlock of what this creates. It almost wasn't like, it was like a means to an end, right? Like the whole Exponent product was simply a means, but like the end was like to create this marketplace where you could literally productize and capitalize crypto tribalism.
That's the key right there.
That is the key part of this whole project. That was cool.
Yeah, because speculation is, I think it's one of the things that defines crypto today. And you hear so much shit talk happen online and this and that and psyops and this and that. Well, people lie, numbers don't. And so when you see those bribes happening, whether it's a long or short a token, like that's when shit gets real.
Yep, 100%.
Yeah, and I feel like Bera Chain is really the perfect place for this to happen.
Yeah, I think so too, because of their built-in liquidity bribe already. So projects don't have to like worry about that. So they could actually free up their tokenomics and free up their token emissions to play this game, which I think is the more providing liquidity is so passive that it's like second nature now to most crypto folks. So it's like you don't even think about it, right? You kind of take it for granted. But this element, though, I think is a really it's a very natural evolution. Now that you really think about it, after kind of Ryan so succinctly broke it down for us, this is a natural evolution to that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm really excited to see this come out once Bera Chain launches, to be determined, hopefully soon. And yeah, we'll just go from there. Where do you see Exponents go? Do you think like Exponents could be one of those protocols or applications that like defines the next wave or the next meta, especially if like you have different participants in it?
I really think if it catches a narrative bid, I think it'll work. I think it needs to catch a narrative bid because the product as it is super complicated. Or from what I'm hearing, I hope the UI is gonna make it like stupid, dumb, simple, like degen box type, right? I'm gonna degen box and farm the token.
Yeah, that's what popped in my head. The degen box.
Yeah, like that needs the UI game, and plus for Ryan's background coming from Anchor, which we all know was like a really sweet, simple KISS UI. So I think time will tell definitely on this one. Time will tell. I want it to happen because this literally.
I want something exciting to happen. I want something new to happen.
Yeah. This would make crypto Twitter even more more louder, and people are going to be even more tribal.
Well, we get people excited again. Yeah, because it's like something novel. It's something that gets the people going. It's like actual money's on the line. So yeah, we'll see what happens. To be determined. And when it happens, we'll be here keeping track of it. And if you want to keep track of that, make sure you go ahead, hit that bell button, subscribe, leave us a comment, let us know what you think. Give us a like on YouTube. Follow us on all of our socials on Twitter, X, Telegram, and TikTok at Flywheel DeFi. You can follow me on Twitter, X, at DeFiDay22.
You can follow me at 0xcapital_K.
And we'll see you next week. Peace. Everything said on this episode is not financial or tax advice. This channel is strictly for educational purposes and is not an investment advice or solicitation to buy or sell any assets or to make any financial decisions. This video is not tax advice whatsoever. Please talk to your accountant and do your own research.